Oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. It's Eva Natiello. Welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh. I say that at least once a day. And I'm sure it is in definitely, you've read it apparently in one of my books, I assume.
Well, I love audiobooks. So when I heard you on a different podcast, I bought the memory box because it was on audio. Your newest book is not on audio, so I will buy that when it's on audio.
Thank you.
And first of all, your narrator did a fantastic job. She,
Isn't she amazing?
yes.
She's the hottest narrator right now in publishing. So
Well,
uh,
she not, what's her name?
Cassandra Campbell.
Okay. Well, all I know is she knocked it out of the park with that one. She did a great job. And it's a great book, The Memory Box. Anyways, when I heard Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I laughed out loud. I was in my car and I was listening to it. I was on the way to the gym and I'm thinking to myself, people are going to be looking at me like, what the hell? And the reason why is because my grandma would say that all the time. Well, both my parents were born in Ireland and they
Okay.
immigrated over. My mom was like 12, 13. My dad was 19. And yeah, whenever we do something wrong, it'd be, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, what are you doing? Yeah, it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's somebody's grandmother that, I think it was definitely mine. And although we're not Irish at all, but um, yeah, I love that expression.
Yeah. So I gotta ask you, has anybody ever Googled their name and came up with something interesting or shocking because they got the idea from your book?
Yes.
Oh, let's hear about it.
Oh, this is going to freak you out.
Okay.
This is an incredible story. So, as you just said, the memory box is about a woman who Googles her name and discovers a past that she doesn't remember. She doesn't recall, she doesn't know about, and it's about her. And I will tell you where that idea came from, which is a really interesting story. But let me first answer your question because this is nutso. So that book was published in 2014. I'll never forget when I published the book, I went into this grieving period. I don't know if this happens to you, but I definitely grieve my characters once I've published, and I don't have to think about them on a daily basis. They're not in my, it's because even in my sleep, I think about them.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
constantly thinking about them.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So right away, I'm into a new book and I'm writing, and a year goes by, and maybe 2 years go by, right, since the memory box has been released. And I'm writing that day, whatever day it was, I'm writing my new project. And I had this question in my mind about the main character, Caroline. And I forgot something about her maiden name or her married name. And I went back into my manuscript to look for it. Okay. So this has been 2 years have
Yeah.
passed since I've thought about her. So I went back to the manuscript, found what I was looking for, got back to work. Later that day, I had a dentist appointment. I go to the dentist. I come out of the dentist appointment and I get in my car and I look at my emails just to see, because I haven't looked at them in an hour. And I look at my emails and I see I received an email from Caroline Thompson.
Oh.
Caroline Thompson is the name of my protagonist.
Yes, yes.
I gasped because I thought it must be her.
I
It
bet you
must
said
be
Jesus,
her.
Mary, and Joseph. That's what I
Yes,
think.
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. How could my protagonist be emailing me? I freaked out, right? So I opened the email. Sure enough, it's a journalist from Vice magazine named Caroline Thompson.
Okay.
She was writing an article about something and Googled her name. When she Googled her name, she found my memory box book description that says a woman Googles herself and discovers the shocking details of a past she doesn't remember. And she thinks that's her. So she thinks that's her and that she's just found something that she was unaware of about herself. And I'm thinking my character is emailing me. Both of us had a very traumatic day. But so she reached out to me and she said, I need to talk to you about this because this is wild. This has come full circle. My name's Caroline Thompson. I was Googling my name. I found your character who was Googling her name. And so she interviewed me for an article, and it was really hysterical. I'll send you the link to that. It's a
please do.
funny article. And she's a very paranoid person too. And she said, I'm super paranoid. Oh my God. So that is kind of the most outrageous thing that has happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I did Google my name after reading the book. I did. I was just like, okay, I'm boring. There's no, I mean, there's some like policey stuff and like the podcast and some book stuff, but yeah, no startling revelations about moi.
Okay. Well,
So
the idea for the memory box came from an article I read in the New York Times like 10 or so years ago about people Googling themselves. It's when Googling first started, right?
yeah.
Like 10 or 12 years ago. And a 17-year-old boy Googled his name with his friends. So they're all in high school. He Googles his name and he discovers he's on a missing persons list
Holy cow.
in Canada.
Oh, jeez.
And he was living in LA. And so for 15 years, he was taken from his dad's home when he was 2 and taken to LA, raised in LA. And because now he finds out he's on a missing persons list, so he can't go to his mom and say, look what I found, right?
Right.
So he tells a teacher, and then the teacher is, obligated to tell the police, and they look into it. And sure enough, the kid was taken by his mom, who had lost him in a custody battle.
Yeah, that does happen. Yep.
And so she really could not take that, living her life without raising this child. And she took him to LA. She never changed his name. That was really wild. But back in the 80s, we didn't know, or it was like the late 80s, but we didn't know there was going to be Google.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So she didn't change his name. He had a very unusual name. And so when I read that article, I just thought, I started dreaming about it, actually.
Wow.
I was devastated by that story. I was devastated for the boy. I was devastated for the mom. I was devastated for the dad, for the sister back in Canada. There was no winner in that story, know. And so it stuck with me. I was not a writer at that point, by the way. I was not a writer. I had never written a book in my life, and I never intended to write one. And that idea got stuck in my head. And then I started dreaming about the person who did the Googling was a mom, and she had young children. And that's where the story came out of. That's where my book came out of.
Okay. Interesting. Back in the 80s, a milk carton would be your Google, for something like that.
For something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a degree in psychology from Albany. What was your original intent with that? What were you going to do with that?
I wanted to work with children. I really wanted to work with children who had suffered abuse, either emotional abuse. And I found out pretty quickly, emotional, physical abuse. I found out pretty quickly that I would not be a good candidate for that. I mean, I remember one of my internships working with children, and I just could not separate myself from them. I wanted to bring everybody home, and I didn't want to leave them. And it was terrible. Like, I could not make the kind of break from this is my job. And I am a bit of an empath, and I that would have been the wrong thing for me. So but I was still fascinated by psychology, so I stuck with that major. Yeah.
So do you think that degree helped you in the corporate world and then later on being an author?
Oh my God. Okay, I'm sitting at my desk right now. Okay, I have something to show you.
Okay.
So it's been a while since I've graduated college, but I still have this book on my
Abnormal
desk.
Psychology, 3rd edition. Look at you.
Yeah. And I look at it all the time. It's a great resource for my characters.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I kind of thought would happen there. you know, when I first heard you, I was thinking about marketing and the lessons learned the time that you were with Estee Lauder. You were you were what, a vice president in charge of what
Yeah,
was that?
global
That's
communications.
what it was. Yeah.
So
So
that was my job right before I became, that was a I worked in cosmetics for about 12 years or so with in corporate, you know,
mhm.
in a corporate capacity, and then since then as a consultant. But I did start in cosmetics at Estee Lauder, and that's what I was doing right before I started writing.
So the story that you told, which I would love for you to repeat, is how Estee Lauder started in
Yeah,
the fragrance business. She was what, making in her garage or basement or something like that.
yeah,
Could
yep,
you kind of go over how she
yeah,
kind of broke
sure.
out?
So the reason why I even tell this story, and in fact, I spoke at a conference last weekend in Ohio at the Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop, and I taught a couple of classes, and one of them was on marketing. And the reason why I tell this story is Estee Lauder, when I started at Estee Lauder, actually, she was still coming to the office, the
Okay.
founder. And she was, you know, advanced in age, and
Hmm.
she still came in 3 times a week. And so I did a few events for her when I first started working there. I was pretty young. And I learned so much about the founder, this woman, Estee Lauder, and what it took for her to get her brand launched in 1950. And you're right, she made these products with her uncle, who was a chemist, and they made them in their home. And she tried to get back then in 1950s, of course, there was no such thing as selling online. You needed a retail partner, right?
Right.
So and she was in New York City, and she really wanted Saks Fifth Avenue as her flagship store. And they were not taking her calls. They were just, who is this person? She's a nobody. We don't know who she is. We're not taking her calls. They wouldn't give her a meeting. They wouldn't even talk to her on the phone. And the thing I love about this story is, even with all that rejection, right? And I was telling the story because I was talking about my own rejection when I came out with my first book, The Memory Box. I got 87 rejections for that book, right? I queried every single agent I could possibly think of, and they all said the same exact thing in unison: no.
In unison.
So so I did think about Estee Lauder when she got all that rejection. She never said to herself, well, it's because I have a crappy product, right? You know, she
Right.
didn't sulk about her product not being a great product. She knew that she was providing products and a service for a certain group of people, a certain customer. And she knew if she could get it in front of them, that they would love it. But she couldn't get in front of them because she couldn't pass the gatekeepers, right?
Right.
So what she decided to do was she decided to go right past the gatekeepers, and she went to Saks Fifth Avenue one day, and in her handbag she had a tiny bottle of Youth Dew, which was the fragrance, her very first fragrance. And if you've ever been to Saks Fifth Avenue in New York City, on the Fifth Avenue side, there are all these circular doors. And she walked in the circular door, and there was a runner that would go from, you know, street to street, the whole block. She took the perfume out and she poured the perfume up and down that carpet and then
Wow.
left the store. And then a week later, she called the office again and said, I'm wondering if you'd like to talk to me now. has has anyone asked about the fragrance at the front door?
Yeah.
And of course, by then, in a week's time, everybody was talking about the fragrance. Everyone wanted to know what it was, where could they buy it, what brand. And they had no one had an idea. No one had a clue. So they had all
Wow.
these customers clamoring for this. And that's how she bypassed the gatekeepers, went straight to the consumer. She knew who her consumer was, which is what I teach in marketing all the time. Know your genre, know who your readers are.
Right.
And she went straight to them and let them decide. And they were the decision makers there, and they put her on the map. And so when I launched my first book, which was a self-published title, The Memory Box, I used her strategies, and that one in particular, dusted it off, right, and modernized it for 2014. It was at the time, but I mean, her strategies, a lot of her marketing strategies still work today. They still work. I mean, marketing is marketing. And so I do love to tell that story because it points to a lot of things. It points to one, because you get rejected doesn't automatically mean something's wrong with your product. You could either be, the messaging could be focused on the wrong audience, right? Or the messaging needs to be tweaked. It might not mean your product stinks. And in my case, of course, when 87 people told me that the memory box was not going to be published, I thought it did suck. You know, I really
Yeah.
did. I thought they all knew something I didn't, but that's not always the case. And so, so there's a great example of that. Forging ahead, going past the gatekeepers, finding your community, and letting them decide.
You know, it
And within a month's time, The Memory Box was the #1 book on Amazon. So they did decide.
yeah. Well, the ultimate decider is the public, you know, the consumer. You know,
Right.
if are they going to fork out their hard-earned, you know, $4.99 or $15 or $10, whatever the case may be, you know, however, you know, if it's a paperback or a Kindle or audiobook or whatever. But, you know, they are the ultimate, you know, it's like, okay, yay or nay, you know, if they're going to be doing that. And if they're a repeat customer, you got a series going or whatever, and you got these like diehard super fans that, hey, you know what? Ava's got this book coming out. I don't even have to read the blurb. I just know that it's going to be good because her last book was fantastic. You know, once you catch them in with that big net like that, boy, life is great, but not
Yeah.
an easy thing to do. And it reminds me a lot of Sarah Blakely, who she was the founder of Spanx. It's women's like leggings. And that's before there was such thing as women's leggings. And she would go to like Macy's and all these department stores. It took forever for her to get those in there, and they would shove them in the back of the store. She would go and grab these like huge displays and put them up by the registers when nobody was looking, when the managers weren't there.
Wow.
And then, you know, she'd go back the next day and they'd be in back, and they go back and forth and back and forth. And finally they started selling really well. And then she got on Oprah, and then, well, the rest is history. She did fabulous, you know, but she didn't give up, and she put herself out there, you
Yeah,
know.
she believed in her product. I
She
mean,
did.
that is a big part of it. And what you're saying too, it's making me think of, that's why influencers have become so hot, right? People listen to influencers. They listen to, if they follow somebody, and whatever it is, if it's a fashion influencer, a book influencer, a food influencer, I mean, if you find somebody who's got your taste, you will follow anything they say.
You're right. You're right about that. You know, speaking of putting yourself out there, I think that's probably one of your superpowers.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
you know,
I
because, you
need a
know,
cape. I need a cape now.
there you go. Well, yeah, I forgot where I read it, but I don't know how many book clubs you go to or you've
Mm.
been to. And how many do you keep track of that, or?
Yeah, well, it was over 200. I've done over 200 book clubs for my first book alone. So it's considerably more than that now. I did count them a few years ago. And I mean, there's so many wonderful aspects of book clubs. And this I also got from Estee Lauder. I mean, she used to say, if you can talk to a woman one-on-one, face to face, you will have them as a customer forever. And so when I said to you, I dusted off a few of her original strategies,
Yeah,
that was one of them. And so uh, what that meant to me was book clubs. If I could get in front of a book club and talk to them about the book, and have them talk to me about what they thought and what their theories were and what they liked and what was exciting, I knew I would have customers for life. And certainly that has happened over and over again. Most people do not have the author at their book club. Okay, so that's
Right.
number one. It's kind of exciting, right?
Sure.
To have, okay, that's number one. Number two, if you really think about how you can turn this into, I'm the queen of leverage everything,
Hmm.
wring out every opportunity when you do something like, so for instance, a book club, when I'm there, I take tons of pictures of everybody there with the book in their hand. Then I post them all over social and I tag the people, tag the participants, because when their friends see that they had an author at their book club, all of a sudden they want the author at their book club.
Okay. All right.
So it just starts taking over. It starts taking over. And wonderful things have happened at book clubs. I've gotten speaking engagements out of them. I've gotten people interested in trying to buy movie rights and tell their, agents
Hmm.
about it. And I've been invited to sell my books at certain events, and just a lot of stuff happens when you're face to face with people. That's why FaceTime is so really valuable.
Where do you find these book clubs? Where do you get these connections?
Well, I am a firm believer in grassroots marketing for anyone who's starting out. Like, so one of my classes that I taught last week were for beginner authors, new authors. And what I mean, a lot of people don't like the word marketing. A lot of people, they break out in hives when they hear they have to do something.
Yeah.
um, but the thing I always tell them is, listen, if you know that you can move the needle with you can move your sales needle, you have the power to do it. Marketing is not a negative. Marketing is a positive. Like, you have the power to move the sales needle. Why wouldn't you learn about it and try and do what you can within what you're comfortable with, right? So with new authors, I always say to them, if you can't be a rock star in your own community, you're not going to be one anywhere, right?
Sure.
So start grassroots. Start with your local bookstore, your local library, your local book clubs. Like in this town, the town I live in, when I launched that first book, I would say in the first year, I definitely had over 40 book club appearances in my town alone.
Wow. Okay.
I just couldn't believe it. It just kept snowballing and snowballing. And there have been more since. There's tons of book clubs in my town. But so what I tell people is, start with your neighbors, start with your kids' friends' moms, start with your kids' teachers. Even the schools in my town have asked me to come and do book clubs with the teachers. Some teachers have book clubs.
Okay.
So start with one. If you can get one, then you post those photos on your social.
Yeah.
You definitely need, in your back matter, you need a set of book club questions. You might have noticed that in the back of the memory box, I have
Mm.
book club questions. So by virtue of just having them there, people say to themselves, oh, this must be a book club book. It's kind of
Oh,
funny. It just suggests it.
yeah.
I would highly encourage you, Pat, to put them in your back matter.
That's interesting. I've never thought of that. That's awesome.
That's why
Okay.
you got me here. That's why they
Yes.
pay me the big bucks.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, is speaking of putting yourself out there, one story that you told that I absolutely loved was the beach story. Could you tell
Yes.
that again? It's great.
Yes, of course. So when I used to work in PR and communications, I would do these crazy events. I loved my job. It was very creative, and I thought of very interesting and innovative ways to hold a press event that journalists would remember, journalists would have something to talk about. And so the more creative and the more unexpected, the better you are, right? When you're doing a marketing or a PR push or trying to create visibility for your product, in this case, it's a book. Um, so what I thought was, and I'm also like the kind of person, I just said it before, I try and squeeze out every single bit of opportunity. This is a great example of that because there's so many things that I leveraged one on another. I decided to, during the summer, I live in New Jersey. There's a lot of beach in New Jersey, as you know, and people love to read on the beach. And my books are beach reads, they're book club reads. So I decided to make t-shirts, bring a couple of friends with me. The t-shirts said on them, uh, what's your beach read? Or what did you pack in your beach bag? I think I wrote, what's your beach read? And on the back of the t-shirt was the cover of the book. And I was going to go up and down the coast of New Jersey. The
Okay.
coast of New Jersey.
Look, you're getting your steps in too. You're killing two birds with one stone.
Oh yeah, four birds with one stone. I'm getting my
Yes.
steps in totally. So I'm going up and down the beaches. I did concentrate on beach communities that had bookstores.
Okay. Smart.
And then I contacted the media and I offered a video crew to follow me on the beach as I walked up and down the beach with my books, with my t-shirt and my friends, and these balloons we had these balloons I had them made into boxes, and it was for the
Cool.
memory box.
Yeah.
Square balloons. And I walked up to people who were reading,
Mm-hmm.
or clusters of women who were reading and chatting. And I said to them, do you guys like to read suspense books or psych thrillers? Or if somebody was reading, I said, what are you reading? Sometimes I'd know in advance, like what they were reading. I could see the cover.
Yeah.
So I knew if it was an appropriate, what did I call it? The ambush. Yeah. I knew if it was an appropriate ambush. And the video crew got all of this. And so there were many opportunities where I gave out the book. I spoke to them. I did a signing. I asked them lots of questions, photographed it all, put it on Facebook. And then what I did was I alerted the bookstores that I'd be coming to their beach this Saturday or coming to this beach this Sunday. And I said, if you don't have the memory box in stock, you may want to get it in stock, because there's going to be a big buzz going on at the beach. A video crew is following me. And so I leveraged the live event. I had the video made. And then that journalist put that on her outlet. Then the still photos I put on all the social, tagged all the people, so it kept multiplying. The bookstores bought the book, right, to have in stock. So there was like a 1, 2, 3 punch there.
What jumps out at me is it's very smart, and it's a great idea. It's like, hey, I'm going to go on the beach and look for potential customers here and maybe, create some buzz. But you didn't think it's like, gee, I hope somebody will capture this on film. I hope somebody records this. I hope I'm near, some bookstores. You thought about all this before you did it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think some people may falter is, but again, you're going to circle back to, you believe in yourself. You believed in yourself so much that you wouldn't, and it is kind of going out on a limb and you're putting yourself out there. I mean, it could flop. You could spend,
definitely.
Yeah,
it flopped a bunch of times.
Yeah,
like, people were like, who's this weirdo? I don't want to talk to her.
Please help. And it's one with a square balloon coming at me. I don't know what their deal is, but that you make your own luck sometimes. And that's what that was.
Yes.
That's what I love about that story. Now, looking back, what do you think was a waste of your time, or was there such a thing?
I never really think that.
Okay.
And I always make myself the promise. I mean, sometimes I'll do like an event, a library event, or a bookstore event where 3 people will show up, and one is the librarian. So 2.
Right.
And one of them is somebody who helped me carry my books in the library. And I know that for a fact, because it's happened to me, where you don't get what you are hoping for. You don't get the kind of reception you're hoping for. And so I always, on my way to those events, I always give myself a pep talk and I say, make lemonade. Do not leave without making lemonade. And so I try to think this could falter, right? Something may happen like 3 people show up. And I do remember once I went to a library event and 3 people showed up and one was the librarian. So only 2 people were there.
Ouch.
And I was determined to give them everything I give a 50 person or a
Sure.
100 person, everything. I was not skimping on these people. They came out. I remember it was a winter night and I gave them everything, even though there was only 2 people. We had so much fun. And one of them said, you know what? I would love it if you could speak at my event. And she had an event for, it was an amazing event. It was a fundraiser. 200 people came. I was the keynote speaker.
Oh,
She
great.
loved the whole story of from rejection to the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
And it was an inspiring story. And from that blooper of a night with only 2 people, I ended up getting a keynote. I sold like a ton of books, over a
Yeah.
100 books, and I got paid for the keynote.
Well,
So try to make lemonade is all I can say.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, what do you think is the best use of your time when it comes to marketing books? What should you be spending your time on?
Well, that is a really good question, because who's got the time for any of this stuff, right?
Right.
Especially when you're an author and you're dying
Absolutely.
to just put out the next book. What do you do? And
Right.
so, I mean, the most important thing, and it is the most basic thing, but it is the most important thing, is how do you appear and how do your books appear online? Okay, so that means things like, very specifically, your Amazon book page. If your Amazon book page, like for instance, I got a client, so now I'm a consultant, right? I help
Mhm.
authors market their books and I help authors self-publish their books or even publish their books. I have a new client that's needed help just figuring out, should she be querying, who should she query? So I work with both traditionally published and also indie published.
Mhm.
But I got a new client earlier this over the weekend who said to me, I really want to run an Instagram tour. I want to run a bookstagram tour, and I
Mm.
want to do these different tours. And she wanted to do something else where she was willing to invest and tons of visibility. And I know what she wanted to do. She wanted a PR blast so that she could get interviews with the media. Okay. So the first thing I do always when I get a new email from a potential client is look at her books. Okay. I went on her Amazon page, start with Amazon, right? That's where we sell the most.
Sure.
And I was just kind of shocked by what I saw, because I saw, first of all, a cover. So this is her first book, a cover. I could not determine what genre the book was by looking at the cover, right?
Yeah.
So
Oof.
within 1 second, I couldn't tell what it was. I
Mhm.
looked at the description and it was, I'm sure you've seen this, like one square block of text, no paragraphs,
Oh,
no
okay. Yeah.
bold, no italics,
Right.
no nothing, a block of text. Okay. And then her, when you looked at her author name, it was not a link on Amazon. Your author name is a clickable link to something called Author Central, where
Yeah, right.
you
Yep.
go to the author page where you've got all kinds of stuff going on there. And also, she had 2 reviews for her book, and her book had been out for like a year. Okay.
Ooh, ouch.
So I said to her, I'd be happy to help you with all these things, but you should never be spending money or trying to get eyeballs or traffic to your book page without making sure, at the very, very least, that book page, which is your storefront, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're selling books, your book page is your storefront window. If that window is not looking awesome, like things are going on, like your book is, you know, first of all, we can tell right away what genre your book's in. Your description is so readable and so filled with keywords and quotes and
Right.
testimonials,
And
and
there's a hook. You got to hook them.
there's a hook,
Right.
and you've got reviews, and then we click on your name, we see you've got videos and you've got pictures of yourself and you've got links to your social pages. And I said this in the presentation I did last week in Ohio. You should not, no tumbleweeds, okay? There should be no tumbleweeds blowing through your Amazon book page. Because if you're willing to spend all this money to get people there, and then they go there and there's nothing for them to see, nothing. And they don't read, and they're confused even, maybe, possibly, you know, by your cover, your blurb, or
Right.
whatever. You have just thrown that money away. So I think, to answer your question, the most important thing to do is to invest time and effort on your retail pages and your author pages. And that basically is hand in hand with having a really good comp list of other books in your genre. They're best-selling books in your genre that have been published within a year or two, that you're constantly looking at their stuff. You're looking at their pages, you're looking at their author page, you're looking at their websites to make sure that you're a player. You got to be a player. If you're going to attract people to your page, don't lose them. You got them on the hook. You're
Right.
going to lose them if it's tumbleweeds, you know.
I love it. Tumbleweed. That's so awesome. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, you're talking, and everything you're saying makes a ton of sense as far as putting yourself out there, doing it in a very smart, actionable way, you know, with purpose. You're just, it's not just a shotgun, you know, that kind of thing. But most authors are introverts. You know, what do you suggest for the people out there who, you know, they don't like crowds, they don't like talking to people, they probably won't do, you know, like a book tour or anything like that? What do you suggest to them?
Well, that, what I just said about the basics and your
Yeah.
retail pages is key for an introvert who doesn't have to get out of their pajamas and could make that happen, seriously. And you could have photos of yourself, like, you know, with a book in your hand as though you're reading, and someone captures that and you put
And a
that up there.
cat in the other hand? No,
Yes, absolutely. If you have a pet, you have no
yes.
excuses. You have no excuses. On Instagram, you should be like going viral with your cat photos. So those basics are key for an introvert. Absolutely. The other thing you can do is you can run, you know, a tour on Instagram to get your visibility up. You could do grassroots things like make sure your local library has your book. You don't have to be an extrovert for that. You can send them an email. You can,
Sure.
or I would hand deliver it. And or get local press. You can send a press release out. I think when you're an introvert, and you're starting out, getting that grassroots, that community engine going, having people in your community who already love you. You know, these are your friends, families, colleagues, neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Friends, family, colleagues, neighbors. That group can start the buzz for you. You just have to, you know, you have to engage with them. They already love you. They want you to succeed. So give them some give them some calls to action when you
Okay.
send your email out, maybe announcing your launch of your book. You can ask a couple of things, have a few asks. What about asking for reviews? I mean, I hate to say it, but you need to ask for reviews these days. People don't automatically think of reviewing. Even people who love your book, they're not automatically thinking, I got to review this book. And reviews are currency. And if you can really stack up those reviews, that was something I had in my mind always when I launched the first book. I knew that Amazon algorithm was going to start to click into gear once
Right.
I got a substantial amount of reviews. And that's another thing that can go in your back matter. We talked
Oh,
about a
I put in the front
Q&A.
and back matter of mine.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Excellent. There you go.
Absolutely. So, how much of your characters or situations are real? Like with the
Mm.
dog, the kids, yeah, that kind of thing in your books.
Well, I think all my characters are a combination of things I make up, and things I see in the world. I think one of the greatest powers most writers have, or skills most writers have, is their ability to observe the world, observe people and nature and weather and light, and just everything that you want to put into your writing. But so you're looking for things like, I was on vacation this summer and I was sitting by the pool with my book, my little notebook that I bring everywhere.
Hmm.
And some guy passed in front of me and I said, "Oh my gosh, that's one of my main characters, Massimo. I can't believe that's him. What's he doing here?"
Hey,
And
get back here.
so,
I got to interview you.
yeah, and I noticed his beard and it just was perfect. It was perfect
Okay.
timing, and I was able to describe the beard and what it looked like. And so you take, little bits and pieces. None of my characters are completely a real person, but
Okay.
it's a combo of a lot of
Interesting.
different things.
One thing that jumped out at me with your book was your descriptions are very vivid.
Hmm.
They're very detail oriented. Is that on purpose or is that just how you write?
I guess I never consciously said to myself, I got to make this. So I guess it is just the way I write. That's interesting.
Yeah, because there's a couple of schools of thought when it comes to writing. One is, when you're describing a person, you could go straight down to, like every pore on their forehead or whatever, or you could let the reader use their imagination. And most of the time, it's a combination of both. But yours are very vivid and very detailed.
Wow, because I remember the characters in that book that you read, which is the memory box. I thought I did not give a lot of detail about physical appearance, because especially with Caroline, because I wanted readers to put a friend of theirs face
Oh,
on that
okay.
character.
Okay.
I
Interesting.
wanted them to think that they have someone in their life exactly like her.
Wow. That's cool. I like that. Now, your main character in Memory Box is very detail oriented. I mean, she's got printouts and all kinds of stuff. Is that you? Are you
No,
that okay?
no. But she was so fun to write, man. Oh my gosh, I loved it. And well, this is kind of funny. You're just making me think of it now. Sometimes when we write a book, we're thinking of the themes all along, right? We're thinking of, and one of the reasons I wrote that book is I'm really, really nervous about my own memory and losing my memory. And, so it's a fear of mine,
Sure.
actually. But I did not know until maybe a good year after the book was released that it really is about control. It's about control and the amount of control, and that character wants control over everything. And we
Yes.
we won't tell everybody what we mean about that.
Correct.
Yes, because then we would have to shoot them.
Yeah. We don't want to do that. Come on
No,
now.
no. But it is about, I mean, to a certain degree, that is one of the themes of that book, is having control.
All right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and start talking about the writing. And there's a quote in your on your website that I found interesting. It said, "I'd never intended to author a book, but the book found me and refused to be ignored." Could you kind
Yeah.
of expound on that?
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to that article that I read in the Times, and how I was dreaming. First, I was almost traumatized by that story, thinking about that boy finding
Yeah.
out, it was so terrible. I still feel that way when I think about him. But the fact that it wouldn't let go of me. You know, it was ending up in my dreams, it was popping up in my dreams. And then I got insomnia for a decent amount of time. Over a month, I had
Oof.
insomnia, and I was writing constantly. And like I said, I'm not a writer, or I wasn't then. I wasn't a writer. I'd never written anything, nor did I ever plan to. So when the kids were going to school, I would take them to school, come back to my house, and write until the minute I had to pick them up. And I remember days thinking to myself, what am I doing? What is this? What is this? I mean, I seriously did not know what it was. I didn't know that I was actually writing a book, but those scenes in my mind in my sleep were very vivid. That woman with the two little kids and her finding out things was very vivid. And then I basically did put myself into the character, where, because some people asked me, how did you write those scenes where she's spinning out of control, right?
Yeah.
She's spiraling out of control, and she thinks she's losing her mind. And I just tried to imagine, what if this really did happen to me? What if it happened to me? I would lose my mind.
You know, I forget who it was, but I forget who it was, but I asked an author, I said, you know, for me, I've had a lot of different life experiences. You know, I was a bartender. I sold cars. I was a restaurant of a 24 manager of a 24-hour restaurant. You know, I
Wow.
was a cop in a big city for 25 years. And, you know, I've got a lot of cool stuff to draw from, but
Yeah.
there's people who haven't had those life experiences. I said, how do you like keep it quote unquote real and make it, you know, interesting? And he said, what if? You got to ask that question. You said, you know, what if X, Y, and Z? That's where a lot of these books start.
Yes.
I
Well,
wish I
that was
remembered who.
definitely I mean, and it's sort of a method acting, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, as far as the writing goes, how do you keep track of all those different plot twists and turns? Because the memory box has a lot of them and they're great.
Yeah.
How do you keep track of all that? Like physically, how do you do it?
Well, it's funny. A lot of those plot twists happened very late in the writing,
Hmm.
very late, like
Yeah.
second to last draft, or last draft, or third to last draft, when I needed, so I was working backwards almost, like I needed for readers to maybe think one thing and not, so it was working backwards. It was kind of like, okay, I need to send them down this path where this is a credible answer for what's going on. Of course, it wasn't the answer, it wasn't really where, it wasn't the actual
Yeah.
twist.
Hmm.
So it was kind of working backwards. That's all I can really say about that.
Okay.
How did I mean, I did have all over my office, which I'm sitting in right now. Um, I did have like a flow chart, if you will.
Okay.
I used the floor for that. And I also had illustrations that I had made of the house she lived
Mm.
in and the town she lived in,
Oh, okay.
so that the two floors of her house, I knew where everything was. I knew when she was running and freaked out or hiding or whatever, how somebody could find her or not find her. Because I knew as a reader, when we're reading a story and we're in chapter 3, and the character walks down her hall from her bedroom to the bathroom, and she turns left into the bathroom, and then in chapter 11, if she's doing the same thing and turns right into the bathroom, as a reader, we'll know it in a second.
Yeah.
We'll be like, where's she going? The bathroom's on the other side. Because,
You're running into a wall. Look out.
yeah, because we have this visual image, right, of the
Sure.
book. So I wanted those illustrations. Yeah. And the town too.
Okay. Do you use any like special software when you're writing like Scrivener or Atticus or
I just started Scrivener.
you did? Okay.
Yeah.
How's that
I
working
love
out
it.
for you?
I
Okay.
love it.
For me, it's got so many bells and whistles on it. I thought I had to take a course just to figure it out. I mean, I wrote one book with it. I could use it, but then I was just like, I kept on going back to Word. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and the books I'm writing right now, I'm doing it on Word, but before I was writing this last series, I was using Atticus, and that was working really well. It's very new,
Yeah.
and I really like Dave Chesson, the founder.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. I've had him on the show. I've met him in person, and he went to college in Whitewater in Madison, Wisconsin. So we got some commonalities there. But I do like that. But you're using Scrivener now. Before
Well,
that, were you?
full disclosure. My manuscript is not in Scrivener. I'm still writing in Pages, believe it or not, but I'm organizing everything in Scrivener.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
keeping track of like research there and characters there and
Mm,
names. And
that
so I'm
yeah, you know what?
utilizing,
That makes sense. I
yeah.
like that. I use Plotter for
Oh,
this
you
book that
do?
I'm using right now. I'm using Plotter, and
Hmm.
it's working out really well.
Good.
It's working out really well. So, indie or traditional, and why?
What do I write?
Yeah.
Well, indie, because I couldn't get an agent to save my life.
Hmm.
That's not to say that I wouldn't like to have some traditionally published books, so I might query in the future.
Now, the
Um,
second book that you came out, is that indie as well?
that's indie as well. Yep.
Okay.
And I think for an author, a really, really strong position is to have feet in both worlds.
Right. You know, there's I hate the phrase, starving artist. There's no reason why you should. And there's value to your work. And sometimes authors, in maybe newer authors, they just, I'm gonna starve for my art or whatever. And I'm like, that's ridiculous, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and then it's like, well, I'm gonna be indie until I die. And I love indie authors. I love the spirit. I love, no gatekeepers and success stories like yours, where it's like, okay, traditional, blah, blah, blah. You stuck your nose up to me, and well, now I'm going to show you,
Yeah.
and you're not the only one who has those stories, and they're fabulous. But if the right offer comes along, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. No, I always said that both worlds together is a really strong position to be in.
Yeah, I, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
So your writing day, are you 7 days a week? Are you up at the crack of dawn and just pounding away, or what does that look like?
I do write every day. I write in the morning, first thing, and I try and go, I would say 4 or 5 hours of writing, and then I
That's a good amount of
switch
time.
gears. Yeah. Then I switch gears and I do some marketing, I do some client work. So it's very full,
Yeah.
it's a very full day.
Now, do you have a word count goal for like the day, the week, the month, or is it just like by chapter, or what does that
Yeah,
look like?
I did when I was working. So now I'm working on the second draft of the my work in progress right now. So when I was working on the first draft, I started with 1,000 words, and then I went through, NaNoWriMo, so I upped my goal.
Hmm.
And then it was like 2,000. And this book that I'm working on now, I was not using my time efficiently because I was letting I was using the writing to figure out who my characters were and what exactly was happening instead of planning it beforehand. And I think I would change that for my next one, because it wasn't very efficient, and I ended up with a first draft of 150,000 words. So I don't want to do that again.
So are you a plotter or a discovery writer slash
Well, I
pantser?
was pantsing the whole way with this first draft. I will try and change for the next one and be more of a plotter. Yeah, I think I
Okay,
can do that. Yeah.
gotcha. Now, do you dictate or do you type, handwrite? What do you do?
I type and handwrite. So
Okay.
sometimes when I'm stuck, I go into my car with a notebook and I just sit in my driveway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I
Just
figure out things. I'm telling you, I can sit at my desk with my laptop for hours trying to figure something out, where all I have to do is go to the car with a notebook, and within 15 or 20 minutes, I have it figured out.
so changing the scenery a little bit helps.
Yeah,
And the
changing the
method,
scenery and
yeah.
having, and I think writing, I think the physical pen and paper.
You're not the first person who has said that, that's for sure. Have you ever
Hmm.
tried dictation?
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, I just did it recently. I was like, I'm going to try writing a book. I want to write the entire book with the dictation. So I had this idea, and I was afraid of falling into the rabbit hole of switching gears to this new idea when I was so close to the end of the other one. So, and I didn't want to do that. So I only dictated. I don't know. I haven't given it enough try yet. Do you do that?
I've gone back and forth. Yeah, I've got really bad arthritis in my hands.
Okay.
So sometimes I dictate just when, the fingers are aching. But what I have found is for fiction, dictation works better than nonfiction because I've written both. And dictation I think is the best for dialogue because you're talking.
Yeah.
It's very natural and it flows.
Yes.
And you have to have the self-discipline, I believe, of letting the mistakes go until you're done with like
Yeah.
that paragraph or that chapter or whatever, and then go back and edit because it's really tempting to go back and just start fixing everything, and then your flow's gone.
Right.
So that's the way I see it. Interesting. So going back in time, we'll be a little philosophical here. What advice would you give like your 20-year-old self or your 30-year-old self? I always love asking people this question.
Hmm.
I know it wasn't that long ago, but
That's
give it a
nice.
give it a shot.
Well, I do like to say, especially as it relates to creating, being a creative, is to act before you think.
Okay, gotcha.
Don't think too much because it might actually stop the whole creative process.
Oh yeah. So, what books do you read, and do you read in your genre?
Oh, yes, I read in my genre, and I also love reading out of my genre. And right now I'm reading Hester, which is so good. What else have I read lately that I really loved? Trying to think. Some of the big books of the year, Vladimir, I really liked that book. And what did I just read before Hester? Oh, it's terrible. I forget titles, and I'm big on Goodreads because it keeps me very organized.
Okay.
And I wish there was a Goodreads for film, because when you're looking for something to watch,
Yes,
you can't think of anything.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm a big reader. I think reading is, of course, absolutely necessary for writing.
Okay. Now, what would your best advice be for a struggling author? Either like a newbie or somebody who's been doing it for a while and they just cannot push that boulder up the hill. It's just
Yeah.
going nowhere.
Well, one of the things I do say is to read your favorite book, the one that made you want to be a writer, or the one you wish you
Hmm.
had written. And if you could read, in most cases, you wouldn't even get to the end. You would read a couple of chapters and go straight back to your manuscript, you
Okay.
know, um, or to be inspired by your own writing. Like, read the best thing you've ever written, the best thing maybe in this manuscript you're working on, and and remind yourself who wrote it, and be impressed with your writing, and realize that that first draft, you only have one goal. Your goal is not to write well. It's not to write a great book. Your first goal is to finish. That's it.
Okay. Gotcha. I have some Facebook questions. I have the Cops and Writers Facebook group, and they have a couple
Oh,
of questions in here for you.
awesome.
Let me go there. All right. Joan Raymond asks, best ways to market without ad spend. We didn't even talk about ads, really.
Yeah, I'm not a pro at ads. I mean, I'm still trying to learn myself. but I do think that in 2022 and 2023, it is the way to move the needle in sales. But I do think before you spend a penny, you need to work on those basics of your retail pages.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also your website. Like, if you are a lucky author to get people interested in you, that they're actually looking for you online, and you don't give them something fabulous to look at, you're not going to get them back.
Right.
You can, and it's hard enough getting them on the line, getting them and reeling them in. So
Sure.
make sure all of those things are top notch first before you spend a penny.
Okay. Dan Petrosini asks whether a BookBub feature excluding the US is worth it.
I have done international only BookBub deals,
Mm-hmm.
and it was worth it in that I think BookBub appreciates the fact that you switched. Sometimes when you get the no from BookBub and they
Right.
turn you down, they send you an email and say, this is what you can do instead. You can lower your price, or you can do a freebie, or you can do an international deal only. And I think if you say yes to that, they give you a little star next to your name. I don't know if
Mm,
that's true, but that's what I have experienced. I did do an international deal only, and it helped me to secure a yes the next time.
gotcha. Okay. And Christopher Kratchman asks, in your experience, how effective are Facebook ads?
I like Facebook ads, and I'm better at them than Amazon or BookBub,
Really?
although
Okay.
I intend to study those a little bit more. Um, but I like them. I think they are worth it. Yeah, definitely. Just
Okay.
make sure you do your due diligence and study people and read the books and all that stuff.
Right. With me with Facebook, and I admittedly I have not studied it like real hard. It was really easy to lose money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Facebook was very happy to take my cash. I was just like,
Yeah,
whoa, where'd that go? And that didn't take long at all.
I know.
All right. You were a New York Times and a USA Today best-selling author. Was that on purpose? You're like, hey, I want to make these lists, or did it just happen because you sold so many books?
No, I planned for 6 months. I really wanted to do something splashy or try anyway,
Yeah,
and I thought that would be pretty splashy.
absolutely.
Um, and so I did kind of plan for 6 months, isolating a week where I thought I could move. I didn't know, of course, you don't know how many books you need to hit a list because you
Hmm.
don't know your competition. Um, and I was absolutely blown away when it happened. I wasn't expecting for it to happen, and I think I sold 23,000 books in a week. 23,000 books a week, yeah, to make the New York Times. And I was like, I don't know, I was on it in, I think, the 10th position, maybe the 10th book, best-selling book, which
Okay.
I was really happy with.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah,
Why wouldn't you?
yeah.
Now, how did you push the needle that fast? Did you stack book promotions, ads? How do you do it?
I didn't do ads because this was in 2016. I didn't know anything about ads.
Okay.
I did do a price drop. I stacked promotions. I did a ton of PR. Um, I did a lot of stuff, a
Okay.
ton of blog guest posts, and I just, it became my main focus for a while. I think I didn't even write during that time. I was hoping that I'd hit one of them and was really lucky to hit two. Yeah, and that changed a lot for me. That really did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, when this is a fun question, when Memory Box and or following you goes Hollywood,
yeah.
who would you like to play the main characters?
Oh, well, I did have muses so my muse So I did have actually some interest from Hollywood for the
Okay.
memory box.
I would think so. That genre is hot. I would think that would totally
Yeah.
be that.
Yeah. And I'm not giving up hope on that. After it hit the New York Times bestseller list, I ended up getting a TV agent and a film agent who were
Mhm.
really psyched about it, and they were with CAA, and they shopped it around. And I did get interest from Laura Dern
Oh,
to produce, um,
okay.
and it didn't move in the right direction,
Okay.
but that was pretty exciting. My muse, but this was so Julianne Moore was my muse for Caroline, the main
Oh,
character. And
okay.
that was, 10 years ago or so.
Sure.
So I'm not sure she would be appropriate anymore. And Dr. Sullivan, my muse was Patrick Seymour Hoffman. So
Oh, okay.
unfortunately,
Yeah, he's
he's
passed away.
he's passed away. So yeah, I love those Instagram pages that read a book and then they come up with the entire cast. I don't know if you're
Oh, yeah,
familiar with
yeah.
them. Yeah, they're so cool. But I have not lost hope. I think I've got my fingers crossed. Maybe something will happen. I mean, all these streaming opportunities need content, so hopefully, I think at some point too, I wasn't expecting this, but readers have asked for years for a sequel to that book, which I never intended to write.
Ooh,
So
okay.
yeah, so maybe that will get it on the map again. So we'll see. But the memory box sells very, very well to this day.
I was gonna ask you, do you have like certain actors or actresses in your head when you're writing this? And obviously you did. When
Yeah.
I was reading it, what popped into my head was Lady
Yeah.
Gaga.
Wow.
I think she would be a fabulous, fabulous
Yes.
main character for that book.
Yes. How can we make that happen?
I don't know. I don't have the Lady Gaga phone number
Come
or the
on.
hotline, but I'm
Oh,
telling you, I think she would be perfect.
how could you tease me like that? Maybe she's listening. Maybe she'll be listening.
We can only hope. Lady Gaga, we love you. Meet suit aside, I think you're awesome.
She would be amazing.
Yes, I respect her. She's one of the most. I think she's just like a genuine raw actor,
Yeah.
and I think she's got a voice like second to none. She's got a natural talent. That's
Yeah.
just it's amazing. But anywho, I think that's a good place to
I like what you're thinking.
I think this is a good place for us to finish our chat. Where can people find more about you and your books?
They can find me at my website, which is Eva Lesko Natiello.com. They can find me on social under Eva Natiello, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all have the same handle, Eva Natiello. And my books are sold, everywhere books are sold. And if you choose one of my books for a book club, I would be thrilled to be at your discussion.
Outstanding. All right. Well, very good. We'll tell you what, I think this is a good place again for us to
Yeah,
end.
thank
Thank you
you.
so much for being here. Everybody go out, buy the memory box and following you. I
Thank
got the
you.
memory box. I absolutely loved it. The audio version, it's fabulous. Go out and get it. I think that's it for now.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Okay, much continued success to you.
You as well.